New tonight on Our News Live at 7, a nationwide plan. Hear what the Works Minister says is being done about demolishing shanty towns across the country. Our Bethany McDermott has more from Grand Bahama tonight. But first, are you the father? Tonight, the nation's leader says paternity tests may be necessary as he weighs in following mounting concerns about Bahamian citizenship. Plus, more support for law enforcement officers who recently were slammed with a new insurance policy. Tonight, an outspoken union leader is sounding off on their defense. Her comments straight ahead. And then in our news at 7:30, Grand Bahama could soon see a new international airport after the facility was destroyed nearly 4 years ago. The Deputy Prime Minister gives an update. Our news live at 7 starts right now. Welcome to Our News Live at 7. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jamila Mizik. Following that landmark ruling on citizenship, Prime Minister Philip Davis saying paternity tests will be necessary in some instances. Speaking on the sidelines of the groundbreaking ceremony for a new hospital in Grand Bahama, Davis says there are some presumptions that will first have to be fleshed out.
We need to ensure that the daddy is the daddy and that the daddy knows. And that's the only way we'll know that is if you have some kind of a test. And there's some presumptions as well that we need to discuss. Presumption that if there's a birth certificate that has the father's name on it, there's a presumption that he is the father. But there are a lot of issues that has to be worked out.
It's been said the ruling will affect around 1,500 people who have applied for Bahamian citizenship. Moving forward, Davis says once an individual can demonstrate his father is his father and is Bahamian, he will not need to apply to become a citizen. But he says the matter isn't topping his government's legislative agenda.
I'm awaiting some advice from the Attorney General's office on where we are going, and I know his office is looking at what steps should be taken going forward. But that's not a priority at this time because you have the court ruling, and the court ruling right now settles what the law is. The question is how it is to be enforced and effected, and that is something that the AG's office and his team are looking at right now as we speak.
In other news, the Shantytown Committee is putting together a nationwide plan to demolish shanty towns, but the Works Minister telling reporters today the plan won't only apply to shanty towns. Bethany McDermott has the details.
Following that Shantytown ruling from the Supreme Court, Works and Utilities Minister Alfred Sear says the Shantytown Committee is putting together a comprehensive plan to tackle the issue. He says due to international demands, the plan will have many sides.
We will be unveiling shortly a comprehensive national plan. And because of the implications in terms of the international obligations of the country, we're also communicating with some of the multilateral agencies because it will involve a major undertaking of expenses.
His comments come after Chief Justice Sir Ian Winder ordered the demolition of only 2 structures in an Abaco shantytown. That's far less than the over 260 structures the Davis administration wants to be demolished. Attorney General Ryan Pender recently said the Davis administration would carry out demolitions using the process outlined under the Building Regulations Act, which falls under the remit of the Minister of Works. Sear says the plan will not only apply to shantytown structures.
We will see it with respect not only to the unregulated communities, but other parts of our country where we have structures which are not compliant with the building code and which were not permitted, some of which are squatting on government's land and private land.
Now, given the comprehensive plan, we also asked the Works Minister if there's a price tag associated with the demolition exercise.
A budget has been formulated, and we're speaking with the Ministry of Finance and and also seeking the cabinet approval, of course.
How much is that?
I cannot say because it hasn't been approved.
Reporting from Grand Bahama for Our News, I'm Berthany McDermott.
Thanks, Berthany. The country's highest court has upheld a murder convict's conviction and sentence. Rodriguez Jean-Pierre was convicted on February 3, 2013, of the March 24, 2012 stabbing death of Wendell Miller. In 2013, Pierre was sentenced to 35 years imprisonment. Almost 6 years later, Pierre filed an appeal against his conviction and sentence. The Court of Appeal refused the appellant's application for an extension of time to appeal his conviction. Pierre challenged this decision to the Privy Council and lost. Meanwhile, a fishing trip turned deadly after a Grand Bahama man's body was found floating in waters off Bimini. Police say shortly after 8 on Saturday morning, the 41-year-old was reported missing from a fishing boat. Hours later, the Freeport resident's lifeless body was found in waters near the government dock in North Bimini. The victim was retrieved from the water and transported to the Alice Town Police Station, where he was pronounced dead by the island's doctor. An increase in reported sexual assaults in southwestern New Providence has prompted police to beef up saturation patrols and warn residents to be extra cautious. It comes a day after an attack early Monday morning. Police say that's when 2 women were sexually assaulted after 2 men broke into their apartment in the Chippenham area around 2:20 a.m. The victims were asleep when the men entered their home through a window. After the robbery, both suspects sexually assaulted the victims before leaving the apartment in one of the victims' red Nissan Note. On Saturday, police said a woman was robbed and sexually assaulted in the Bacardi Road area shortly after 10 a.m. Much more to get to, but first, it's now time for your first look at temperatures. Meteorologist Greg Thompson is standing by in the Weather Center. Good evening, Greg.
Yeah, thanks, Jamila, and a good evening, everybody. A nice evening outside to get outdoors and enjoy. Temperature near the 80-degree mark, 81 under mostly clear skies. The winds are out of the north-northeast at 7 miles per hour, and your feels-like temperature is at 80 degrees. Temperatures around the islands right now, it's 79 in Freeport, also in Marsh Harbor, Abaco, 81 in Alistown, Bimini. We pick up 82 in Nicholstown, Andros. Great Harbor Key, 80, 79 in Governor's Harbor, Central Bahamas, 81 Kemps Bay, and in Georgetown, 79s in Arthurstown, Cat Island, and Coburn Towns in Salvador. In Deadman's Key, we pick up 80 degrees there, and into the southeast Bahamas, 82 in Duncantown, Ragged Island. More 81s in Colonel Hill, Cricket Island, Delectable Bay, and in Abrahams Bay. Providenciales, Turks and Caicos Islands, you are a rain cool, 77, and Matthewtown, Inagua, you round out our temperature profile at 80 degrees. On our satellite, upper level low is starting to pull out towards the east. You can notice just a bit of a spin out there just to the east of the islands, but that low is still pulling a lot of moisture across the southeast Bahamas. Some showers and thunderstorms associated with that boundary will continue to plague the southeast Bahamas. That's why the Turks and Caicos Islands, you guys had some very nice temperatures, but high pressure at the surface will dominate our weather for the next several days. We're looking at sunny conditions and hot temperatures. That's your first look at weather. Stick with us. A look at your extended forecast is still to come.
Still to come on our news, more support for law enforcement officers recently slammed with a new insurance policy. A union leader is speaking out in their defense. Her comments right after this break. Plus, increased reports of dengue fever cases globally, as 4 Caribbean countries have been placed under the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention's Watch Level 1. And today in history, find out interesting facts about the day that was May 16th, including the day a bill to rename the Labor Day holiday after Sir Randall Fox made its way to Parliament. That's coming up when Our News returns.
It's your thing. Do what you want to do. It's your thing. Do what you want to do. It's your thing. Do what you want to do.
Shareholders are very happy.
It's your thing. Do what you want to do.
Our pledge to provide quality service each year remains true. REV is made for you.
Law enforcement officers who were recently hit with insurance policy changes are getting more support tonight. President of the Bahamas National Alliance Trade Union Congress, Belinda Wilson, standing in solidarity with the officers, arguing government made a unilateral policy decision without consultation with the Police Staff Association or the Correctional Staff Association.
And I say to a Minister of National Security, the Honorable Wayne Monroe, that those associations are not unions, but they are employees. They have rights. And it does not hurt to communicate and to consult with them on a decision that you're going to make that is going to change their terms and conditions of service. So no, they're not a union, but they do have unions that support them.
Days after the Police Staff Association hit out at changes in the insurance policy for officers, National Security Minister Wayne Monroe justified the change, saying for officers already on the force, the insurance plan remains the same. The change, which will only apply to new officers after July 1st, allows for single-family coverage. The addition of other family members will require additional payment. Wilson joins Bahamas Public Services Union President Kimsley Ferguson, who last week spoke out on the matter.
We are ready to move when they call on us. They are our affiliates, and we support them 100%. And we're saying to the minister and to the government, get around the table with the prison and the police. Remember now, they are the same persons that you expect to protect you and to protect our country. So we have to treat them in a manner where they feel as though they are important to this nation.
In other news, Minister for Grants Bahama Ginger Moxie is clearing the air when it comes to the relationship between the government and the Grants Bahama Port Authority. Moxie once served as the vice president of the GBPA, but resigned in May 2014. She says since coming into office, there have been ongoing efforts to make the Grants Bahama Port Authority more progressive as they work toward their shared goal of improving Freeport.
The Port Authority has had its fair share of challenges over the years, and the government has always strived to work with the Port Authority. Their grandmama has been going through so much, and we need immediate relief, but we also need a Port Authority that is progressive, that is making things happen. And so the government from day one has been communicating with the Port Authority, the shareholders of the Port Authority, to ensure that Grand Bahama is headed in the right direction.
While there have been efforts to communicate and collaborate with the Grants Bahama Port Authority, the Minister for Grants Bahama says they don't always see eye to eye. Most recently, the rate increases for water services, where she says the Hawksbill Creek Agreement led to the regulator regulating themselves.
The Grand Bahama Port Authority is the regulator, but their sister company, Port Group Limited, owns Grand Bahama Utility Company. And so there's the obvious conflict there, and it's something that is actually an act. And so, of course, we do not agree with any type of increase
When
at
our
this
news
time.
comes back from the break, we turn our spotlight to stories making headlines across the world as China braces for record-breaking heat with temperatures climbing over 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Plus, find out why water bills in Venezuela have skyrocketed as Venezuelans are demanding improvements to these basic services. And 4 Caribbean countries have been placed under the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention's Watch Level 1. We have the details when our news returns. This is our news. Welcome back. We turn our attention now to stories making headlines across the world. A heat wave blanketed China's financial hub of Shanghai, with temperatures climbing to 94.1 degrees Fahrenheit, according to the Shanghai Meteorological Bureau. Monday was the second consecutive day in which temperatures have soared. Major Chinese cities have issued heat advisories as the country braces for record-breaking heat that could threaten electricity supply, crops, and a fragile economy. The heat waves are occurring ahead of the regular summer season, which is particularly worrying for agriculture. Crop damage could drive up food prices, exacerbate inflation, and put pressure on China's economy as it tries to rebound from a 3-year zero-COVID policy that stunted growth. Meanwhile, footage of Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has been published by the presidential office and state media after growing speculation over the health of the 68-year-old leader. The video released by the Belarusian presidential office showed him inspecting an Air Force installation wearing a bandage on his left hand. The office said Lukashenko was visiting a military command base and meeting with top military commanders. Meanwhile, the FBI lacked actual evidence to investigate Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign and relied too heavily on tips provided by Trump's political opponents to fuel the probe. That, according to U.S. Special Counsel John Durham, concluded in a report. The report marks the end of a 4-year probe launched in May 2019 when then Attorney General William Barr appointed Durham, a veteran prosecutor, to probe potential missteps by the FBI. In his new 306-page report, Durham accused the Bureau of treating the 2016 Trump probe differently from other politically sensitive investigations, including several involving Trump's Democratic rival Hillary Clinton. Here's what Trump had to say about the probe when he was president.
It's just a continuation of the same witch hunt. They know it, and behind closed doors, they laugh at it. It's just a continuation of the same nonsense. Everybody knows. They ought to go to work, get infrastructure done, and get a lot of other things done instead of wasting everybody's time.
Why didn't you do an interview with the special counsel, sir?
Well, we're going to see what happens. It's going to be very interesting, but we'll see what happens. There was no collusion. There was no obstruction. Everybody knows it. It's all a big hoax. I call it the witch hunt. It's all a big hoax. So we'll see what happens. I know that the Attorney General, highly respected, ultimately will make a decision.
Venezuela are skyrocketing on top of frequent outages as subsidies from the cash-strapped government to fund basic services have dwindled. Now Venezuelans are demanding improvements to these basic services. Many in Venezuela have been forced to pay large chunks of their salaries for everyday needs, including water and electricity, despite regular blackouts and water shutoffs. For years, Venezuelans' utility bills were kept largely frozen as the government was able to rely on oil income to fund subsidies. Inflation for basic services has come as wages stagnate. This month, President Nicolas Maduro announced that the monthly minimum wage would not rise from 130 bolivars, or just over $5, at the official exchange rate, blaming U.S. sanctions. And some Caribbean countries have been reporting increased dengue fever cases, with 4 under the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention's Watch Level 1. The CDC, in an update on April 17, 2023, under travel notices, states dengue is an ongoing risk in many parts of Central and South America, Mexico, and the Caribbean. It says travelers to areas of risk should protect themselves by preventing mosquito bites. The Watch Level 1 list has 11 countries, of which 4 are Caribbean. The CDC notes this means these countries are reporting higher than usual numbers of dengue cases, and travelers visiting these countries may be at increased risk. The Caribbean countries on the list include Cuba, the Dominican Republic, Guadeloupe, and Martinique. A Watch Level 1 means people should practice usual precautions. Still to come in our news, today in history, find out interesting facts about the day that was May 16th, including the day in 2013 a bill to rename the Labor Day holiday after the father of labor made its way to Parliament. Plus, at the bottom of the hour, Greg is back with your extended weather forecast. And then in our news at 7:30, Grand Bahama could soon see a new international airport. The Deputy Prime Minister giving an update on the project. That's coming up when our news returns. Welcome back to our news. It's now time to turn our spotlight on events that shaped the day that was May 16th. Take a look. On this day in Bahamian history, in 2013, a bill to rename the Labor Day holiday, the Randall Fox Labor Day, made its way to Parliament. Sir Randall Fox is often referred to as the father of labor in the Bahamas because of the work he did to establish the country's trade union. He was also a civil rights activist and author. He is best known for the part he played in the 1967 general election. Sir Randall was even knighted by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth in 1978. The bill to establish Labor Day as a public holiday was passed by the House of Assembly in 1961. The holiday is meant to be a memorial to the contributions made by the working people in the name of progressing the country. On this holiday, members of the labor unions from different organizations, as well as political parties, march in a large parade that often ends at the Southern Recreation Grounds, where union leaders and local politicians deliver speeches. Also in 2013, former Progressive Liberal Party Chairman Bradley Roberts weighed in on the firing of then National Insurance Board Director Algernon Cargill, who was given the boot the day before. The previous year, the Christie administration launched a forensic investigation into allegations against Cargill, but the forensic audit did not confirm any wrongdoing.
Roberts, however, is justifying the cost, comparing it to huge sums spent on 2 commissions of inquiry under the Ingram administration.
And I understand some people have raised the question that the economy is in such a shape and that we should not have been spending this kind of money. Well, in 1992, when the Commission of Inquiry was held by Mr. Ingram, the economy of the Bahamas was at a very low ebb as well, too. So if you want a comparison, there it is.
It was later revealed that the probe cost the government more than $860,000. 5 years later, then Public Services Minister Brensel Rule confirmed the government reached a settlement with Cargill over his firing. And finally, in 2016, Dr. Andre Rollins, who was then Fort Charlotte MP, was pressed by the media about the Progressive Liberal Party choosing Alfred Sayers as their candidate for the 2017 general election. Sayers has previously won the seat 2 times, but Rollins won the seat in 2012 after running on the PLP's ticket. But by 2015, Dr. Rollins became highly critical of the Christie administration and eventually resigned from the party before crossing the floor door and joining the opposition F&M. When asked if he was concerned about going head-to-head with Sears, Rollins implied he was only a big name.
You understand where I'm coming from?
No, so you're saying you're not concerned about Mr. Sears?
Oh, come on. Let me ask you this question. In the last general election, how many big-name persons of the then governing party lost their seats?
Quite a few of them. Quite a few of them.
Okay. Is it unusual in this country for people to go into an election as persons who are well-known senior members of parties and lose? Is it unusual? So what do you fear?
I don't fear anything. I'm asking about you.
No, I fear nothing. Nothing at all. That's why I stand on my feet and I say what I have to say in here.
Now to watch that historical recap again and for all of today's top stories, visit ournews.bs. That does it for our news at 7. Joining us now is our Italia Hall with the latest headlines. Italia?
Thanks, Jamila. Well, residents weigh in on an educator's call for the country's constitution to be revamped and its International Day of the Boy Child. Find out how one school celebrated the day. Here are your latest headlines. The public's opinion first tonight on Our News Live at 7:30. Residents are weighing in on whether or not the Constitution should be revamped. Plus, making progress. Legislation for gender-based violence is now complete. That's according to the Social Services Minister. We have his full comments. Also, ground broken for a new healthcare facility in Grand Bahama. Government officials traveling to that northern island for an official ceremony. Our Berthany McDermott is there. And later, after almost 4 years, it appears as if Grand Bahama will soon see a new international airport. The Deputy Prime Minister giving an update on the project. Our News Live at 7:30 will be back in a moment.
First we plan, then we innovate, then we build. At Bahama Striping Group of Companies, we are committed to quality, to safety, and to service. We know that the road you take is just as important as your final destination. At Bahama Striping Group of Companies, it is our job to make sure the road and the ride are as smooth as possible. From striping roads to building them, we are the right choice, the trusted choice, the only choice to help you build your tomorrow.
Welcome to Our News and thank you for joining us. I'm Italia Hall. Topping news tonight, a mother of 4 who pleaded guilty to child cruelty charges in a case that grabbed national headlines was back in court today. Baby Bella's mom, Austonia Walker, pleading her case in court. But before we get to those court proceedings, is it time for a new constitution or are we better off with a series of referendums? Our Marlena Leonard asked Nassau residents today for their position on whether after 50 years it's time for us to rewrite our country's constitution.
Nassau residents are chiming in one day after Dr. Ian Strawn suggested now may be the time to create a new constitution after nearly 50 years as an independent nation.
What I would say is that What we should focus on, in my view, is the opportunity after 50 years to create a new constitution.
Dr. Strawn also suggested the new constitution could have the potential to revisit and revise the electoral process. Roosevelt Roll tells us he also sees room for changes in the way our leaders are sourced.
I like to see that the certain section of Parliament should be independent. It should not be for the Prime Minister to appoint, but for the people to elect.
This woman supports the idea that after 50 years we need a new constitution and says she hopes it would reflect the realities of the country today, especially for those below the poverty line.
What we are looking at right now, things are not really what it's supposed to be. Think of the poor and the needy, those who can't even afford to even buy their food to eat. We're only oppressing the poor. So we really need to look truly at the Bahamians and the people who wear lifestyle of the people. We really need help.
Kevin Miller says now is the perfect time for a new constitution.
Right now we have an issues in court with certain things we've been there for years but need to be actually fixed. And they never had no chance to fix it. And plus too, I hear they talking about the silent seeker bill, which is the McKeith bill I'm talking about. And I also hear them talking too about the marijuana law, which they have never yet dealt with, even they talking about it.
But not everyone is in favor, as this resident is against the idea of the broad brushstrokes of a new constitution, arguing that although referendums take time, it's important for the sake of democracy that the people have their vote on major, country-altering changes.
Man, with the referendum, I mean, it's good as we can hear everybody point of view more, you know, and them just pushing it on you like that, you know what I mean?
Reporting for Our News, I'm Marlena Leonard.
A mother whose 4-year-old daughter was murdered by her live-in boyfriend has asked the court for a second chance. Estonia Walker is behind bars awaiting sentencing for child cruelty and exposing Deonia Bella Walker to grievous harm. The preschooler was murdered on November 5, 2021 by Darion Smith while her mother was at work. He pleaded guilty to her murder and was sentenced to 25 years as a part of a plea deal. Walker also pleaded guilty. However, Justice Renee McKay will decide her sentence. Her lawyer, public defender Dorsey McPhee, suggested that Walker receive an unconditional discharge. However, the prosecutor suggested that Walker deserved to be sentenced to 5 years in prison. Addressing the court herself, Walker said, "I am humbly asking the court to give me another chance to prove myself a loving, caring, and respectable mother, a chance to prove that I can and will be a better mother than what I've been portrayed to be." Justice McKay will give her decision in July. Police are investigating a stabbing incident that left a student nursing stab wounds. The incident reportedly occurred around 3:30 on Monday afternoon. That's when a group of students got into an altercation on Lightbourne Avenue off Farrington Road. During the fight, someone pulled out a knife and the male student was stabbed about the body. The victim was transported to hospital in a private vehicle where he remains in stable condition. 2 men, a woman, and a juvenile are in hot water tonight after being discovered with high-powered weapons and ammunition in separate incidents on Monday. In the first incident, around 12:26 p.m., officers attached to the Elizabeth Estates Police Station conducted saturation patrols in the area of Seabreeze Boulevard off Flamingo Drive when they saw 2 men acting suspiciously. The officers searched the men in the area where they discovered a high-powered weapon and ammunition. Both suspects were arrested. In the second incident, around 10:22 p.m., officers attached to the Internal Security Division and SWAT unit executed a search warrant at a West Bay Street residence, where they found another high-powered weapon and ammunition. A woman and juvenile who were at the home were taken into police custody. Investigations continue into these matters. Well, Bahamians can expect to see the legislation dealing with gender-based violence within another week or two. That's according to Social Services Minister Obi Wilchcombe, who tells us the legislation is now complete.
We're about to lay on the table of the House of Assembly our legislation dealing with violence against women. So that's going to be laid very shortly. It's now completed. We're changing laws, but law alone will not make it happen, will not change the issue that we're facing. After the crime is committed. What we have to work on is to arrest the mind before the crime is committed. So how do we get to the people so that it doesn't happen?
But Wilchcombe says the legislation concerning marital rape is still tied up in negotiations with various church groups regarding language used within the bill and other concerns.
The marital rape legislation, we have a very important meeting on Thursday with the church. Hopefully, subsequent to that, we'll be able to move in that direction, get that legislation done as well. We'll be discussing the intricacies of the bill. We'll be discussing the language because there's some concern about the language. Marital rape creates an issue for some, so that's being discussed. So we want to get to the nitty-gritty. What are the issues that are separating us, and how could we best eliminate those? And as we can, we find the language that's acceptable to all of us, then we're able to proceed.
Warm temperatures outside the Our News studios this evening, but will the sunny skies continue? Meteorologist Greg Thompson is in the studio with a first look at weather. Greg?
Yeah, thanks, Natalia. Yeah, warm, but very comfortable outside and very nice. 80 degrees, mostly clear skies. Your winds out of the north-northeast at 5 miles per hour, and your feels-like temperature still hanging out near the 80-degree mark. Satellite view, quiet across most of the islands, exception being the southeast Bahamas. There's an upper level, though, that's been spinning across over the last couple of days. It's sliding out towards the east. Still dragging some moisture across the southeast Bahamas, but high pressure across the remainder will continue to generate some very lovely conditions, though warm and very light winds. That's your first check on weather. Stick with us. A look at the extended forecast is still to come.
Still to come on Our News, ground officially broken in the city of Freeport today for a new healthcare facility that's expected to benefit residents on that northern island. Our Brittany McDermott is there. Plus, a new airport may soon be on the way for the island of Grand Bahama, as the Deputy Prime Minister gave an update on the project. We have the details. And later, power outages continuing on the island of Acklins. The Works and Utilities Minister is addressing the issue. And that's all coming up when Our News returns.
Create organic moments with Honest Kids. Brought to you by the makers of Honest Tea. All Honest.
Welcome to The Rewind, an Our News monthly podcast
where we discuss various different topics in the Bahamian society.
I'm your host, Jasmine Lundy.
I'm your co-host, Janae.
I don't like eggs enough.
I get the vibes.
Hey, let's put that on a shirt.
Go by our last name.
Yeah.
This is
The Rewind.
The Davis administration breaking ground for a new hospital in Grand Bahama this afternoon. In his keynote address, Prime Minister Philip Brave Davis said the groundbreaking comes on the heels of difficult times, namely Hurricane Dorian and the COVID-19 pandemic.
That new chapter will define this new medical center as a place of healing, restoration, and care. Every day, our doctors, nurses, and allied health staff show their immense skill and caring hearts. You soothe the pain and fear of patients. You console families who keep concerned vigil over their loved ones.
Officials say the facility will take between 18 and 24 months to complete. Health and Wellness Minister Dr. Michael Darville says the project will be done in phases.
The first phase of our project will be the establishment of a close to 60,000 square foot facility that will be usable as phase 1B of the project is initiated, and the final phase initiated simultaneously. It's a design build. For those who understand the architectural terms, the project is being designed as we build it.
While Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Tourism and Aviation Chester Cooper says the demolition of the Grand Bahama International Airport is soon to come.
We are about to begin demolition. That process is imminent at the moment. There are very complex agreements that's currently being prepared. The lawyers are working diligently. As you would imagine, there is a foreign lender. There is a foreign airport concessionaire.
Now, the Davis administration entered into an agreement with Aerodrome Limited, Manchester Airport Group Limited, and BHS Construction International. He says the total investment is expected to be around $200 million. Cooper also giving an update on the Grand Lucayan deal. He says there is significant interest, but government is waiting for proof of funding before moving forward.
We have significant interest still in the Grand Lucayan Resort, and we have taken the position that we want to validate proof of funding, and we are at the process of going through that at the moment. We've taken a show me the money position, and once we are satisfied, we will make a further announcement. Until then, we're going to continue to work through the process.
Meteorologists and weather experts around the region gathering for a workshop organized by the Bahamas Department of Meteorology. The group is looking at the impact of storm surges on our islands. Joshua Williams reports.
With hurricane season just around the corner, local and international weather experts are now looking at better ways to predict these storms, specifically the surges that come along with them. Dr. Cody Fritz, a storm surge specialist at the National Hurricane Center, says the sessions held throughout will serve as a tool to raise awareness and educate forecasters on improved ways of predicting these surges.
We do this kind of workshop. We do a lot of outreach during the off-season at the Hurricane Center, even for our own coastal EMs, our weather service employees as well, to kind of get them familiar with the products, what they mean, how to use them. It's really important to us that people know what we're saying, because it's not enough just to communicate it. If you don't really know what we're saying, then how will you receive that information, and how can you even use that information for the purposes that we're trying to afford you?
Acting Director of the Bahamas Meteorology Department, Jeffrey Simmons, says the predictions can help save lives.
The idea is to be able to create better forecasting when it comes to storm surge, so that we can have our residents from around the region better prepared. It also assists with the evacuation part of it, so hence that's where the emergency managers and those come into being.
While the workshop serves as forums for weather experts, Simmons adds residents themselves ought to be well versed on the matter.
It's very important because this is one of the major hazards we have coming out of hurricanes. We have seen that not only in Dorian but also in other hurricanes prior to Dorian. And because in the Bahamas we're really a coastal region, and most of our just about all of our residents live around the coast, and so it's important that people know what's going on.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Joshua Williams.
All right, thanks, Josh. Well, residents of Ackland have been without power since the weekend. Works and Utilities Minister Alfred Sayers says they're working to fix the problem, in particular the settlement of Spring Point. Sayers revealing BPL teams are on the ground carrying out the work.
I've been speaking directly with BPL, and BPL has had teams go down on Sunday, also yesterday, and I understand a team from the M&E section of BPL will be traveling this morning. We also will be taking some extraordinary measures.
Sayers says this will involve the transfer of a new generator to the island.
In addition to trying to repair the three engines which are in Spring Point, we also will be transporting a new generator as an immediate effort, and we're currently working right now to get that generator transported from Nassau to Acklands.
It's now time for tonight's Financial Market Minute, brought to you by RF, your local investment bank. This has been your Financial Market Minute. To explore the best performing mutual funds in the Bahamas, visit our website at www.rfgroup.com.
When our news comes back from the break, did you know that May 16th is observed as International Day of the Boy Child? The focus, motivating young men to be happy and healthy. We'll show you how students at the Stephen Dillard Primary School celebrated the day.
We had a big track meet in Grand Bahama over the weekend, and Miami Marlins star Jazz Chisholm may be out for the next couple of games. Stay with us for our sports.
And nice conditions for day 2 of the work week. Greg is back in the Weather Center with your extended forecast right after this quick break. Stay with us.
When it comes to picking a pharmacy that is
Today's sports update is sponsored by Michelob Ultra, distributed in the Bahamas by Jimmy's Wines and Spirits.
Grand Bahama played host to a track meet, and Jazz Chisholm goes down with a foot injury. Here's Tage Adderley with a check on sports. Tage?
Thanks, Italia. Some of the best track and field athletes in the region converged on Grand Bahama over the weekend for the NACAC New Life Invitational. The North American, Central American, and Caribbean Athletics Association, or NACAC for short, New Life Invitational was held in Freeport, Grand Bahama over the weekend. Bahamian athletes Anthony Strawn and Donald Thomas won gold medals in front of their countrymen, with Strawn taking the prize in the women's 200 meters and Thomas in the men's high jump. The event was a rousing success, with athletes from throughout the region and as far away as Ghana and India converging on Grand Bahama to compete in the top-tier meet. The next NACAC event is scheduled for next week in Florida. We know our athletes are going to show out there as well. Marlins star Jazz Chisholm approaches position change from second base to center field with unselfishness and passion. Unfortunately, that same passion for playing the outfield may have cost him a few games. Bahamian baseball star Jazz Chisholm is on the mend after a collision with the wall on Sunday afternoon. After hitting a home run in the 7th inning to give the Marlins a lead, he injured himself going all out attempting to protect that lead in the 8th, trying to catch a fly ball off the bat of Henry Ramos, in what would turn out to be a 6-5 Marlins loss to the Cincinnati Reds. Now, Jazz was the second Marlins player who injured himself in the game trying to make a play in the outfield. Right fielder Jesus Sanchez also hurt himself earlier in the game trying to make a diving catch. Thankfully for Jazz and the Marlins, x-rays came back negative and the doctors pronounced the injury a contusion. That's really bad luck for Jazz just as his hitting was starting to come around. Hopefully he'll be back on the field soon. That was your look at sports. I'm Tage Adderley.
Still ahead on our news tonight, find out how students of the Stephen Dillard Primary School celebrated International Day of the Boy Child, a day set aside to encourage young men to be happy and healthy. And nice weather around the islands for this Tuesday, but what can we expect for the rest of the work week? Greg is back with your extended weather when our news returns.
Well,
Welcome back to our news. Warm weather continuing today, but there can be some wet weather on the way. Greg is back in the Weather Center to help you plan for the days ahead and the extended forecast. Hello, Greg.
Yeah, thanks again, Natalia. Welcome back, everybody, for a final check. We could see some spotty showers, but high pressure is going to remain the dominant weather features. That's going to continue to keep us with some very warm temperatures across the islands. Meantime, though, we still have that upper level low that's spinning just to the east of the islands. That's dragging some moisture across the southeast Bahamas, so some isolated showers and thunderstorms likely across that area tonight through tomorrow, but that low pressure system will eventually pull out towards the east and weaken over the course of the next couple of days, with the high pressure remaining across us for the remainder of the week. Future forecast showing just those isolated showers down near the southeast Bahamas pulling off towards the east, isolated to spotty showers across the northwest Bahamas through tomorrow, and then on Thursday still seeing one or two more of those isolated to spotty showers across the area. Boating conditions for all areas tonight through tomorrow. Very nice on the waters. South to southwest winds at 10 knots. It will fall light and variable at times. Seas running 2 to 3 feet over the ocean. Tide was high at 6:26 this evening. Here's a look now at your national forecast. In the extended forecast, keep a couple of showers in the forecast throughout the remainder of the week, but high pressure, as I mentioned, will stay in charge, and those temperatures are approaching the summer-like temperature values near the 90-degree mark. That's a look at our weather. Back to you, Talia.
All right, thanks so much, Greg. Well, today is recognized as International Day of the Boy Child. It focuses on young men and their well-being. On Tuesday afternoon, the young men of the Stephen Dillett Primary School were celebrated during a special assembly. They had the opportunity to hear from several leaders in the community who shared words of wisdom. Principal of the institution, Clinton Josie.
During this day and time, when the male figure is at risk and so much trouble coming from that group of citizens, it's important to let our males know that they are also valuable. They need to remain focused. They need to concentrate on what it is that they want to be. And as boys, they need to know too that they have a support system to encourage them and propel them into their destiny.
These young men say they feel inspired following the assembly and had this advice for other students who want to become successful.
They don't need the teacher to give them homework. They could give themselves homework by going on the ministry's website to read, study how to get A's, choose the right friends.
All right, great advice. And to see that story again or any story from tonight's newscast, you can visit ournews.bs. And with that, we thank you for joining us for Our News Tonight. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Natalia Hall. We'll see you tomorrow night. Have a great evening.